Check. Prologue. The moment everything shattered. The first sound I remember from that Christmas dinner was the scrape of forks against china plates, a soft, rhythmic noise that suddenly stopped when my sister pulled her boyfriend toward me. Olivia's smile was already fixed in place before she opened her mouth, that practiced expression she'd perfected over 30 years of performing for audiences. The Christmas lights strung across my father's Victorian dining room cast red and green shadows across her face, making her look like something out of a department store window display. Beautiful, artificial, cold. "I want everyone to meet my sister properly," she announced, her voice carrying that bright theatrical quality she used when she wanted attention. The conversations around the table died down. Cousins stopped mid-bite. Aunt Jennifer set down her wine glass. Uncle Tom turned in his chair. Olivia's hand was firm on her boyfriend's arm. Ethan Cole, the investor everyone had been fawning over all evening. He stood beside her, tall and still, his expression unreadable. "This," Olivia said, and paused for effect like she always did, "is the failure of our family." My father, Robert, laughed first. It was that short barking sound I'd heard my entire life, the one that meant finally someone said what we were all thinking. My stepmother, Sharon, nodded, something almost proud flickering in her eyes, as if Olivia had just delivered the perfect punchline to a joke they'd been setting up for decades. The room settled into that familiar hush, the sound of communal cruelty dressed up as family tradition. I sat at the far end of the table, where I always sat, half in shadow, my hands folded loosely in my lap. I'd learned a long time ago not to react. Reactions only fed them. Silence was safer. But Ethan Cole didn't laugh. He set his fork down. The clink of metal against porcelain cut through the thick air like a knife. Everyone turned to look at him. "Interesting," he said quietly, his voice low and deliberate. He looked at Olivia, then at my parents, then slowly, carefully at me. "Because you're fired." The sentence landed in the center of the table like a stone dropping into still water. Olivia blinked. "What?" "We're done," Ethan added, his tone unchanged. "Effective immediately." And that was the moment, that single crystalline moment, when everything I thought I understood about my life quietly, irrevocably shifted. My name is Maya Barrett, and this is the story of how I learned to stop disappearing. Chapter 1: The Invisible Years. I need you to understand something before we go any further. I wasn't always invisible. There was a time when I believed I mattered, when I thought if I just tried hard enough, stayed quiet enough, worked long enough, someone in my family would finally see me. That belief died slowly, the way most important things do, not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small erasures. Aurora, Oregon isn't the kind of place people dream about. It's 45 minutes outside Portland, small enough that everyone knows your family's business, but big enough that you can still feel anonymous if you try. We lived in a Victorian house on Morrison Street, the kind of house that looked warm from the outside, with its wraparound porch and gabled roof, the kind that promised Sunday dinners and childhood memories worth keeping. From the outside, we probably looked perfect. Inside was a different story. I was 8 years old the first time I realized I was different. Not special different. Wrong different. It was a Tuesday night, I remember, because Tuesdays were meatloaf nights. Sharon, my stepmother, though she never liked me using that word, had made her usual portion. Enough for 4 people. Exactly 4 people. Robert sat at the head of the table. Sharon to his right, Olivia, my older sister, to his left in the good chair with the cushion, and me at the far end on the wooden chair that wobbled if you shifted wrong. The serving dishes came around. Robert took his portion. Sharon took hers. Olivia's plate was filled by Sharon's careful hands, the best pieces of meatloaf, the crispiest edges, fresh green beans, mashed potatoes with real butter melting on top. By the time the dishes reached me, there was one thin slice of meatloaf left, mostly the part that had stuck to the pan. Cold green beans, a spoonful of potatoes. "Don't be greedy, Maya," Sharon said softly when I looked at the serving dish. Not unkind, just factual, like she was teaching me an important lesson about the world. I learned to eat what was left. I learned not to ask for more. That same year, I found an acceptance letter on the kitchen counter. I remember because it had my name on it, Maya Barrett, printed in official letters on thick cream-colored paper. The Aurora Youth Arts Collective was accepting applications for their summer program. 20 students, full scholarship. I'd applied in secret using the school's address for the return mail. Mrs. Chen, my art teacher, had helped me put together a portfolio. She said I had something special, that raw kind of talent that couldn't be taught. The letter said I'd been accepted. I brought it to Sharon that afternoon, my hands shaking with excitement. "Look," I said. I got in. She read it slowly, her face expression less. Then she set it down on the counter very precisely, like she was handling something fragile that she didn't want to touch too long. "Olivia has dance that day," she said. "We can't be driving all over town. It's a summer program, 8 weeks. Your mother would want you to be practical Maya. My mother, my biological mother, Sarah. She'd died when I was 3, a car accident on Highway 99 that I had no memory of. Sharon married Robert 2 years later. I'd been calling her Sharon since I was old enough to understand she didn't want me calling her Mom. But the answer is no." The acceptance letter went into the trash that night. I watched Sharon throw it away while she scraped dinner plates, her movements efficient and final. 2 days later, boxes arrived from Portland. Olivia's new dance costumes. 5 of them. Custom-made with real sequins and hand-stitched details. $700, I heard Robert tell his business partner on the phone. Worth every penny for his talented daughter. That was the first time I understood there was money for Olivia's dreams. Just not for mine. Chapter 2. The patterns. I could fill entire chapters with moments like that. The time my college fund, the one my biological mother supposedly left for me, vanished into family expenses the same month Olivia needed a new car. The Christmas when I got 3 presents, and Olivia got 17. The graduation where Robert couldn't make it to my ceremony because he was driving Olivia to a dance competition in Seattle. But here's what I learned: if you tell yourself something enough times, you start to believe it. You're not as talented as Olivia. You need to be more realistic. Stop asking for things we can't afford. Your mother would have wanted you to support your sister. By the time I was 16, I'd learned to make myself small, to move through rooms without disturbing the air, to celebrate Olivia's victories and hide my own disappointments, to accept that love in the Barrett family was a limited resource and it had already been allocated. I got good at survival. I worked 3 jobs through college, waitressing, tutoring weekend shifts at a bookstore in Portland. I paid my own tuition at Portland State. I lived in a studio apartment on East Burnside that smelled like old carpet and someone else's cigarette smoke. And I drew. Late at night, when the city was quiet and the neighbors had finally stopped arguing, I'd sit at my tiny desk and create worlds on paper. Designs for brands that didn't exist. Campaigns for products I'd never be able to afford. Beautiful things born from ugly circumstances. That's how I survived college, by building a portfolio in secret, the way some people build bomb shelters. Just in case. Olivia, meanwhile, graduated with a degree in communications from University of Oregon, paid for by Robert and Sharon, and moved back to Aurora with plans to change the creative industry. "I'm starting an agency," she announced at Sunday dinner. I was 23, visiting because Sharon had insisted, which she only did when she wanted something. "Barrett Creative. I'm going to need someone to handle the boring stuff, admin files, maybe some basic design work." She looked at me across the table. "You're decent with computers, right?" That's how it started. Not with a job offer, not with respect or recognition, with Olivia needing someone to handle the boring stuff, and me being available, broke, and too conditioned to say no. "It'll be good for your resume," Robert said, like he was doing me a favor. "Working for family. I should have run. I should have stayed in my cigarette smoke apartment and built my own life, brick by brick, far away from people who'd spent decades teaching me I didn't matter. But here's the thing about growing up invisible. You start to believe that any attention, even cruel attention, is better than none at all. So I said yes. Chapter 3. The Corporate Machine. 10 years. That's how long I worked at Barrett Creative before the Christmas dinner that changed everything. 10 years of watching Olivia present my concepts to clients. 10 years of seeing my designs launched under her name. 10 years of being introduced as my sister who helps with the technical stuff. While I quietly built campaigns that won awards, Olivia accepted with practiced humility. The agency had grown. We had offices in a renovated building downtown Aurora, all exposed brick and industrial lighting, the kind of space that looked good on Instagram. 17 employees, 6-figure contracts, a reputation for innovative branding that had companies from Seattle to San Francisco reaching out. All of it built on work Olivia claimed as her own. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you leave? Why didn't you speak up?" I tried. Once. It was 3 years into working there. We'd landed our biggest client yet, a sustainable fashion company out of Portland that wanted a complete rebrand. I'd worked for 6 weeks on the pitch mood boards, color palettes, 3 complete campaign concepts with social media strategies and launch timelines. The night before the presentation, I'd found Olivia in the conference room copying my files. "What are you doing?" I'd asked. She'd looked up, not even startled. "Making sure everything's ready for tomorrow." "That's my presentation." "Our presentation," she'd corrected. "You work for me. Remember, everything you create here belongs to the agency. I created it, my concepts, my vision. And I'm the one with the reputation, the connections, the credibility. Clients want to work with me, Maya. They trust my name." She'd closed the laptop, her expression almost pitying. "You're talented, I'll give you that. But talent without presentation is just effort. Nobody remembers effort." I'd stood there in the doorway watching her gather my work like it was hers to take, and I'd felt something inside me go very quiet and very cold. The next day, Olivia had presented the campaign flawlessly. The clients loved it. We signed a 3-year contract worth $400,000. Olivia got a write-up in Portland Monthly as one of Oregon's 30 under 35 creative visionaries. I got a 2% raise and a good job on the support work. That was the moment I should have walked away. But I didn't. Because somewhere deep down in a place I didn't like to examine too closely, I still believed that maybe if I worked hard enough, if I proved myself valuable enough, my family would finally see me as more than the disappointing daughter who couldn't quite measure up to perfect Olivia. Trauma makes you stupid that way. It convinces you that the people hurting you might one day love you if you just try harder. Chapter 4. The Last Insult. It was a Tuesday afternoon in early December when everything started to unravel. Not dramatically, not with shouting or confrontation, with a voice carrying across the break room. I was in the back hallway coming back from a client call when I heard Olivia's laugh. That high performative sound she made when she wanted people to think she was carefree and fun. "My sister doesn't have a real career," she was saying. The words drifted through the half-open door, clear as glass breaking. "She just kind of floats around. Honestly, I only keep her around because family is family, you know. Can't exactly fire your own sister." More laughter. Agreeing voices. Someone Jennifer from accounting said something too quiet for me to hear. "Oh, Maya," Olivia's voice brightened. "She's fine with it. She's never been ambitious. Some people just aren't built for leadership." I stood there in the hallway, my laptop bag heavy against my shoulder, breathing carefully through the familiar sting. It wasn't new. This kind of casual cruelty was Olivia's specialty, the insult dressed up as concern, the dismissal framed as fact. I didn't go into the break room. I walked past it down to my cubicle in the back corner of the office, the one without windows where I'd spent a decade making myself smaller and smaller. That night I stayed late. Everyone else had gone home. It was Jennifer's birthday, and they'd all gone to that wine bar on 5th Street that I'd never been invited to. The office was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic. I sat at my desk and opened my work files, and that's when I saw it. My concept file, the one I'd been developing for our biggest pitch next month, weeks of research and design work, was gone from the shared folder. In its place was a new version. Same concept, same color scheme, same tagline I'd spent 3 days perfecting. But the file name was different. And in the credits section where my name should have been, it said Creative Direction, Olivia Barrett. Design Lead, Olivia Barrett. My name appeared once at the very bottom, Administrative Support, Maya Barrett. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I checked the access logs. There it was. December 9th, 2:47 a.m. Olivia's username. Downloaded my original file. Deleted it. Uploaded her version. My hands were shaking when I heard the knock. Marcus Chen stood in the doorway of my cubicle. Marcus was our intern, 26 years old, fresh out of Portland State, with a design degree and the kind of quiet intensity that made people underestimate him. "I saw her do it," he said softly. His eyes kept flicking toward the hallway like he expected Olivia to appear. "Yesterday afternoon. She downloaded your file, deleted the original, and renamed it." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. "I have screenshots," Marcus continued, "time-stamped. I saved copies of your original work before she deleted it." He pulled a USB drive from his pocket and set it on my desk. just in case you ever need proof." "Why would you do that?" My voice came out rough, unused. Marcus looked at me for a long moment. "Because my older brother did the same thing to me. Our family business. He took everything I built and put his name on it." He swallowed. "I didn't have proof. You do." He left before I could respond. I sat there in the empty office holding the USB drive, and something inside me that had been bending for 30 years finally quietly snapped. Chapter 5. The discovery. I didn't go home that night. I stayed at the office, methodical and cold, going through years of files like an archaeologist excavating a crime scene. Every project I'd worked on, every concept Olivia had claimed, every presentation where my work disappeared into her portfolio like water into sand. I documented everything. Screenshots, timestamps, version histories showing my original files and Olivia's copies, emails where she'd taken my ideas and presented them as her own thoughts, often word for word. By midnight, I had a folder with 43 separate instances of theft spanning 6 years. 43 times she'd erased me and replaced me with herself. But I wasn't done. Something Marcus had said kept echoing in my head: our family business. Family, business, money. I pulled up the agency's financial records, the ones I had access to because I'd been handling bookkeeping for years while Olivia was too busy with creative direction to deal with numbers. I started with the basics: operating expenses, payroll, client payments. Then I saw the transfers. A separate account labeled Barrett Family Trust. Payments coming in every month. Small enough not to be obvious: $2,000 here, $3,500 there. Sometimes larger amounts, $10,000, $15,000. I cross-referenced the dates. My stomach dropped. The transfers had started 8 years ago, right around the time I turned 21. 21. The age when trust funds typically become accessible. I pulled up my personal banking records going back years, my hands shaking so badly I had to stop twice to breathe. There it was. Or rather, there it wasn't. My mother's trust fund. The one Robert had mentioned exactly once when I was 16, telling me there wasn't enough money for the art program because everything was tied up in investments. $127,000. That's what my biological mother, Sarah, had left me. I found the original trust documents in the old file cabinet buried under a decade of tax returns. Established in 1997, beneficiary Maya Barrett, trustee Robert Barrett, Tet. And over the course of 8 years, starting the month I turned 21, every single dollar had been transferred out. Not to me, to the Barrett Family Trust, an account that fed directly into Olivia's personal checking account. I sat there in the dark office, the documents spread across my desk, and I understood with perfect crystalline clarity they hadn't just taken my work. They'd taken my inheritance, my mother's final gift. The only thing Sarah had been able to leave me before that drunk driver hit her car on Highway 99 and erased her from my life. And they'd given it to Olivia. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the night cleaning crew to come and go. Long enough for the sky outside to fade from black to that thin, weak gray that comes before dawn. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I have more. Meet me at the grind 7 a.m. tomorrow. Marcus." I looked at the message for a long time. Then I looked at the documents. Then I looked at my reflection in the dark computer screen. A tired woman staring back at me, someone I barely recognized. For 30 years I'd been taught that my place was in the shadows, that wanting more was greedy, that speaking up was causing problems, that staying quiet was the price of belonging to a family that had never really wanted me in the first place. But here's what I finally understood sitting alone in that office at 4:17 in the morning: I'd never belonged to them. And maybe that meant I was finally free to belong to myself. I picked up my phone and typed back, "I'll be there." Then I copied everything, every file, every screenshot, every piece of evidence onto 3 separate drives. One I'd keep, one I'd give to Marcus, one I'd hide somewhere safe. Because whatever happened next, whatever I decided to do with the truth I'd uncovered, I was done being invisible. I was done being erased. And I was absolutely done staying quiet. End of Part 1. To be continued. Chapter 6, The Alliance. The Grind was one of those coffee shops that tried too hard to be Portland hip while stuck in suburban Aurora. Exposed pipes, mismatched furniture, a chalkboard menu with unnecessarily complicated drink names. At 7 in the morning, it was nearly empty, just a few early commuters staring at laptops, and a barista who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Marcus was already there when I arrived, sitting in the back corner booth with 2 cups of coffee and the kind of tension that made him look like he was waiting for a trap to spring. "Black right." He pushed 1 cup toward me as I slid into the booth. I remembered from the office. The fact that anyone had noticed how I took my coffee felt oddly significant. At Barrett Creative, I'd been making coffee runs for 5 years, and no one had ever once asked me how I liked mine. "Thank you." I wrapped my hands around the cup, grateful for the warmth. December mornings in Oregon had a way of seeping into your bones. Marcus glanced around the coffee shop before pulling a laptop from his bag. He opened it, angled the screen away from the window, and typed in a password. His hands were shaking slightly. "I need you to know something before I show you this," he said quietly. "I could lose everything. My career, my reputation. If Olivia finds out I'm helping you, she'll make sure I never work in this industry again." "Then why are you doing this?" He looked at me, then really looked at me, and I saw something in his expression. I recognized the particular exhaustion that comes from watching someone powerful destroy someone powerless and being too afraid to stop it. "My brother's name is Daniel," Marcus said. "He's 5 years older than me. When our dad died, he left us the family restaurant, a Vietnamese place in southeast Portland that my parents built from nothing. Daniel and I were supposed to run it together. Equal partners." He pulled up a folder on his laptop, his jaw tight. Within 6 months, Daniel had rewritten the partnership agreement, forged my dad's signature on documents, and pushed me out completely. Told everyone I was unreliable, that I didn't want responsibility, that I'd walked away from the family legacy. Marcus's voice was flat factual, but I could hear the pain underneath. By the time I got a lawyer, it was too late. No proof, no documentation, just his word against mine, and he was older, more established, more believable. "I'm sorry," I said and meant it. "I'm not telling you this for sympathy." He turned the laptop toward me. "I'm telling you so you understand why I've been documenting everything Olivia does. Because I know what it's like to watch someone steal your work, your money, your whole future, and have no one believe you." The screen showed a folder structure that made my breath catch. Years of files, hundreds of documents. "I started keeping records my second week at the agency," Marcus continued. "I saw how she treated you, how she'd take credit for your ideas in meetings, how she'd edit your work and remove your name. At first I thought maybe it was just normal office politics, you know. But then I started noticing the pattern." He clicked through folders: project theft, financial irregularities, email evidence, meeting recordings. "Meeting recordings?" I asked. "Oregon's a one-party consent state for recording," he said. "I've been recording every meeting where Olivia claims your work is hers, not to use against you, to protect you, just in case." I stared at the files, my coffee growing cold in my hands. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I wasn't sure if you wanted to know." Marcus met my eyes. "Some people, they just want to survive. They don't want to fight, and I get that. Fighting is exhausting. Fighting with family is—" He trailed off. "I needed to be sure you were ready. And now?" "Now?" He pulled out the USB drive I'd seen him with the night before. "Now I think you're ready. And I think you need to see everything." Chapter 7, The Full Picture. We spent the next 2 hours in that coffee shop booth going through files like archaeologists excavating the ruins of my professional life. Marcus had documented everything with the meticulous care of someone who'd learned the hard way that truth without evidence is just noise. Email threads where Olivia took my concepts and presented them as her brainstorming. Meeting notes where she interrupted me mid-presentation to clarify my ideas by claiming them as her own. Client testimonials praising Olivia's innovative vision on campaigns I'd designed from concept to execution. But it was the financial records that made my hands go numb. "I found these in the shared accounting folder," Marcus said, pulling up a spreadsheet. "Olivia has administrator access, but she doesn't realize the system keeps version histories. Every time she deletes something, it's still there. You just have to know where to look." The spreadsheet showed transfers from the Barrett Family Trust, the same account I'd discovered the night before, but Marcus had gone deeper. He'd traced the money backward, following the thread to its source. My mother's trust fund. $127,000 dispersed over 8 years in carefully calculated amounts. Small enough not to trigger automatic audits. large enough to fund Olivia's lifestyle, her downtown Portland condo, her European vacations, her designer wardrobe she claimed was necessary for client meetings. "There's more," Marcus said quietly. He pulled up another file. "Company expenses. Olivia's been billing personal purchases to the agency restaurants, shopping, even her car payments. Then she reimburses the company from the trust account. It's basically money laundering, just within family accounts. How much over the past 3 years? About $48,000 in fraudulent expenses." I sat back against the booth, feeling like the air had been knocked out of me. It wasn't just theft. It was systematic, calculated. Years of planning, years of stealing, years of erasing me so thoroughly that even I had started to believe I didn't matter. "I need a lawyer," I heard myself say. Marcus nodded. "I thought you might." He pulled out a business card worn at the edges like he'd been carrying it for a while. "Her name is Claire Morrison. She specializes in corporate fraud and family law. I looked her up. She's good. Really good. And she has a reputation for taking on cases that matter to her." I looked at the card. Morrison and Associates. A Portland address. A phone number I'd already memorized by the time I slipped the card into my pocket. "Marcus," I said carefully, "if we do this, if I actually pursue this, Olivia will come after you. You know that, right?" "Yeah." He started packing up his laptop, his movements careful and deliberate. "But here's the thing I learned from losing my family's restaurant: staying quiet doesn't protect you. It just lets the people hurting you sleep better at night." He stood shouldering his bag. "Besides," he added, something almost like a smile crossing his face, "I graduate in May. I've already got job offers from 3 agencies in Seattle. Olivia Barrett can't destroy a career I'm about to start somewhere she has no power." After he left, I sat alone in that booth for another 20 minutes, staring at Claire Morrison's business card. The coffee shop had filled up with the morning rush, parents with strollers, retirees reading newspapers, teenagers cutting class. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that in the back corner booth a woman was deciding whether to blow up the only family she'd ever known. I pulled out my phone and dialed before I could talk myself out of it. The phone rang 3 times before a woman answered. "Morrison and Associates." "Hi," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "My name is Maya Barrett, and I need to speak with Claire Morrison about a fraud case." There was a pause. "Are you in immediate danger?" The question caught me off guard. "No, not physical danger." "Okay. Claire's in court this morning, but I can get you on her calendar for this afternoon. Would 2 o'clock work?" I thought about my schedule. The office. Olivia. The meeting we had at 3 with a potential client where I'd sit silently while she presented concepts I'd spent weeks developing. 2 o'clock would be perfect, I said. Chapter 8. Unexpected Ally. Claire Morrison's office was in the Pearl District of Portland on the 4th floor of a renovated warehouse building that had probably been a factory once. The kind of place that cost a fortune because it had exposed brick and claimed to have character. The receptionist led me to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. The rain had started again, that constant Oregon drizzle that wasn't quite heavy enough to justify an umbrella, but would soak you through anyway. I was early. I sat at the conference table, my folder of evidence in front of me, trying not to let my anxiety show. I'd worn my good blazer, the navy one I saved for important client meetings, and I'd rehearsed what I was going to say at least 20 times during the drive from Aurora. But when the door opened and Claire Morrison walked in, every prepared sentence evaporated from my mind. Maya Barrett. She extended her hand, her grip firm and warm. I'm Claire. She wasn't what I expected. Early 30s maybe, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and the kind of face that looked like it smiled often, but right now was focused assessing. She wore a simple gray suit and practical flats, and she carried herself with the easy confidence of someone who'd won enough battles to stop worrying about the ones ahead. Then I really looked at her face. Claire, I said slowly. Claire Morrison from Portland State. She tilted her head, studying me. Then her eyes widened. Maya Barrett from Introduction to Design. We had that terrible professor who only taught from textbooks from 1987 and refused to acknowledge that computers existed. Oh my God! Claire sat down across from me, something between amazement and delight crossing her face. You lived in Chapman Hall, right, 3rd floor. You used to draw in the common room at like 2 in the morning. You lived on the 4th floor. You were pre-law even then. You had that boyfriend who... Turned out to be a walking red flag factory, yes? Claire laughed, but it faded quickly as she looked at the folder in front of me. Maya, I'm glad to see you again, but I have a feeling this isn't a social call. No, I said quietly. It's not. I opened the folder and started laying out the evidence. The trust fund theft, the intellectual property fraud, the systematic erasure of my work over nearly a decade. Claire didn't interrupt. She just listened occasionally, making notes on a legal pad, her expression growing more serious with each document I showed her. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and looked at me for a long moment. How are you doing? She asked. The question surprised me. I'd expected her to ask about evidence, about documentation, about legal strategy, not about me. I don't know, I answered honestly. I feel like I've been holding my breath for 30 years and I just realized I don't have to anymore. Claire nodded slowly. That's a good way to describe it. She pulled the documents toward her, studying them more carefully. Okay, here's what I'm seeing. You've got a strong case for civil fraud and embezzlement. The trust fund theft alone is significant. That's a 6-figure sum with clear documentation of unauthorized transfers. The intellectual property theft is murkier legally, but could be pursued under copyright law and breach of fiduciary duty, especially since you're technically a partner in the agency, even if Olivia's been treating you as an employee. Wait, I leaned forward. What do you mean, partner? Claire looked at me curiously. You don't know what? She flipped through the documents until she found what she was looking for, a copy of the Barrett Creative LLC formation papers. She pointed to a section I'd never bothered to read carefully. Barrett Creative was established as an LLC with 2 founding members, Olivia Barrett and Maya Barrett. 30% equity to you, 70% to her. It's right here in the original filing. I stared at the document. My name, my signature. From 8 years ago when Olivia first started the agency and needed someone to co-sign the business loan. But she said I was just helping out. Administrative support. She lied. Claire's voice was gentle but firm. You're not an employee, Maya. You're a co-owner, which means everything she's done, taking your work, claiming your concepts, excluding you from profit sharing, is a breach of partnership agreement. The room felt too small suddenly, too bright. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the rain-slicked streets below. I want to be very clear about something, Claire said behind me. Cases like this, family cases, they get ugly. Your sister will fight back. Your father will likely support her. You'll lose relationships. People will take sides. And even if we win, even if we get you everything you're legally entitled to, it won't give you back the 30 years they stole. It won't make them love you the way you deserved to be loved. I know, I said quietly. So I need to ask, are you sure you want to do this? Not for revenge, not to prove a point, but because it's what you need to move forward with your life. I thought about that acceptance letter Sharon had thrown away, about the college fund that vanished, about 43 stolen projects and 100 small cruelties disguised as family traditions, about sitting at the end of the table, always eating what was left, believing I didn't deserve more. I'm sure, I said. Claire was quiet for a moment. Then okay, then let's get to work. Chapter 9, The Corporate Trap. It took us 2 weeks to build the case. 2 weeks of late-night meetings in Claire's office, of organizing evidence into categories that would hold up in court, of strategizing how to approach not just the legal battle, but the personal war that would inevitably follow. Marcus continued feeding us information from inside the agency, carefully, cautiously, always covering his tracks. Email threads, client contracts, financial statements. Every piece of evidence that showed the vast gap between who Olivia claimed to be and who she actually was. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Claire's advice was clear. Let her keep thinking she's untouchable. People get careless when they think they've won. So I went to work every day like nothing had changed. I sat in meetings and stayed quiet. I let Olivia take credit for my latest campaign concept. I smiled when she introduced me to clients as my sister who handles logistics, and I watched. I documented. I waited. It was the 3rd Monday in December, exactly 2 weeks after my meeting with Claire, when everything shifted again. I was working late, finishing up revisions on a pitch deck that Olivia would present as her own the next day. The office was mostly empty. I could hear the cleaning crew vacuuming downstairs, the distant hum of traffic from the street below. Then I heard voices from the executive conference room. The door wasn't quite closed. Light spilled out into the hallway. I stood from my desk intending to just close it on my way out when I heard my father's voice. "Can't tell her yet. She'll make it complicated." I froze. "Dad?" "She's going to find out eventually." That was Olivia. "When the sale goes through, by then it won't matter. The contracts will be signed. The transfer will be complete." Robert's voice had that tone he used when making business decisions, cold and calculated. "Tech Vision is offering $4.2 million for the company. We'd be fools to pass that up." My hand was on the doorframe. I couldn't move. "What about Maya's equity?" Olivia asked. Not concerned, just practical. "What equity?" Robert laughed. "She never exercised her options, never formalized her ownership stake. Legally, she's just an employee. The LLC papers were just to secure the initial business loan. She doesn't actually own anything." My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe. "Even if she tried to claim otherwise," Robert continued, "those original documents disappeared during the office renovation 2 years ago. Remember the filing cabinet that got accidentally taken to the dump?" "Oh," Olivia said. And then after a pause, "Oh, that was smart." "It was necessary." My father's voice was firm. "I've spent 30 years cleaning up your mother's mess, taking in Sarah's kid, raising her like she was my own, trying to make the best of a bad situation. I'm not going to let Maya's misplaced sense of entitlement derail a multi-million-dollar sale." The world had gone very quiet. Even the vacuum cleaner downstairs seemed to have stopped. "When are you meeting with Tech Vision again?" Olivia asked. "Thursday. They want to tour the facility, meet the key personnel, by which they mean you, and review the client portfolio. If all goes well, we could have contracts signed by Christmas." "Perfect timing." Olivia sounded pleased. "We're having the family dinner at your place on Christmas Eve, right? We can celebrate there. Maya won't suspect anything until it's too late." They kept talking, but I'd heard enough. I walked back to my desk, moving on autopilot. I opened my laptop, pulled up Claire Morrison's contact info. My hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to type out the email. "They're selling the company. Thursday meeting with Tech Vision Corp. They destroyed the original LLC papers. Need to talk tomorrow morning." I hit send. Then I sat in my cubicle in the darkness, listening to my father and sister plan how to erase me one final time, and I thought, enough. I'd spent 30 years being erased, 30 years being told I didn't matter, didn't deserve, didn't belong. But I had something they didn't know about. I had evidence. I had an ally in Claire. I had Marcus's documentation. And I had something else. Something more dangerous than any legal document. I had nothing left to lose. When my phone buzzed with Claire's response, "My office, 7 a.m. We move now," I finally allowed myself to smile. Let them think they'd won. Let them plan their celebration. Because while they were selling a company built on my work, I was building something they'd never see coming. Claire's office at 7 in the morning looked different than it had 2 weeks ago. The conference table was covered with documents, post-it notes, and 3 empty coffee cups that suggested she'd been there most of the night. "Sit," she said when I walked in, not looking up from her laptop. "I've been digging since I got your email." I sat. Through the windows, Portland was waking up cars on the bridge lights coming on in apartments across the river, the sky shifting from black to that pale gray that passed for sunrise in December. "Tech Vision Corp," Claire said, turning her laptop toward me. "They're a venture capital firm out of Seattle that specializes in acquiring creative agencies, stripping them for parts, and reselling the client lists. They've done it 17 times in the past 5 years. She pulled up an article from the Seattle Times. "See this? They acquired Brightwork Studios in 2023, paid $3 million. Within 6 months, they'd laid off 60% of the staff, dissolved the company, and sold the client contracts to 3 different firms for a combined total of $8.4 million. "They're not buying the agency," I said slowly. "They're buying the clients." "Exactly. Which means everyone who works at Barrett Creative Marcus, the designers, the account managers, everyone will be out of a job by spring." Claire leaned back in her chair. "Your sister is about to destroy 17 people's livelihoods for a payout she's planning to keep entirely for herself." "And my father." "Oh, he knows exactly what Tech Vision does. He's not stupid, Maya. He's complicit." She pulled up another document. "I found the preliminary contract. It's addressed to Olivia Barrett and Robert Barrett as sole owners. Your name doesn't appear anywhere. Because I don't legally own anything. The documents were destroyed. About that. Claire's expression shifted into something that might have been a smile if it wasn't so predatory. They made a mistake. A big one. She opened a manila folder and pulled out a document I'd never seen before. This is a copy of the original LLC filing from the Oregon Secretary of State's office. The state keeps permanent digital records of all business registrations. Your father and sister can destroy every physical copy they want. The state still has proof that you're a 30% owner of Barrett Creative. I stared at the document. My name, my signature, stamped and dated December 12th, 2016. We can fight the sale, I asked. We can do better than that. Claire pulled out another set of documents. We can expose the fraud, block the sale, and force a full audit of the company's finances, which will reveal the trust fund theft, the embezzlement, all of it. How long will that take? Normally months, maybe years. Claire met my eyes. But if we move fast, and I mean fast, we can get an emergency injunction filed before their Thursday meeting. Stop the sale dead in its tracks. They'll fight back. Of course they will. Your father will lawyer up immediately. Olivia will cry to anyone who'll listen about how you're an ungrateful, jealous sister trying to destroy the family business. Claire's voice was matter-of-fact. They'll drag your name through the mud. They'll make you look vindictive, petty, maybe even unstable. Are you prepared for that? I thought about 30 years of being called greedy for wanting what was mine. 30 years of being told I was too sensitive when I objected to being erased. 30 years of watching my family perform love while practicing cruelty. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. Good. Claire started organizing documents into folders. Then we file today. I'll need you to sign some paperwork, and then I need you to do something difficult. What? Go to work. Act normal. Don't let them know anything's changed. She looked at me seriously. Because the moment we file, all hell is going to break loose. So enjoy your last few hours of anonymity. Chapter 11, The Revelation. I left Claire's office at 8:30 with a manila envelope full of documents and instructions to sign nothing, agree to nothing, and wait for her call. But I didn't go to the office. Instead, I drove north on I-5 through the morning rush hour traffic past the exits for downtown Portland, heading toward a suburb I hadn't visited in nearly 2 years. My Aunt Elizabeth lived in Hillsboro in a small craftsman house with a garden that was probably beautiful in summer, but looked skeletal and sad in December. I parked on the street and sat in my car for 5 minutes trying to decide if this was a good idea. Elizabeth was my mother's sister, my biological mother, Sarah. They'd been close once before the accident, before everything fell apart. After Sarah died, Elizabeth had tried to stay in my life, birthday cards, occasional phone calls, visits that grew less and less frequent, as Sharon made it clear they weren't welcome. The last time I'd seen her was at my grandmother's funeral. She'd pulled me aside after the service and said, "If you ever need anything at all, call me." I'd never called. I got out of the car and walked up the path to her front door. It was decorated with a winter wreath, cheerful and welcoming in a way my father's house had never been. I knocked. The woman who opened the door was older than I remembered, gray streaking through her dark hairlines around her eyes, but her face was kind in a way that made something in my chest ache. "Maya!" Elizabeth's eyes widened. "Oh my God, Maya, is everything? Are you okay? Can I come in?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. Of course. She stepped back, ushering me inside. The house smelled like coffee and cinnamon, warm and lived in. "Let me just sit down, please. I'll make tea." "I don't need tea." I stood in her living room looking at the photos on the mantel. Most of them were of people I didn't know, Elizabeth's husband, her kids, who I'd met maybe twice. But there in a silver frame was a photo I recognized. My mother, Sarah, young, maybe mid-20s, sitting on a beach somewhere with her hair blowing in the wind. She was laughing at something outside the frame, her face open and unguarded. "You look like her," Elizabeth said quietly behind me. "More every year." I turned to face her. "I need you to tell me the truth about something." She went very still. "What kind of truth?" "About the money. The trust fund Sarah left me. Where did it go?" Elizabeth's face changed, something like guilt mixed with old anger flashing across her features. She walked to the couch and sat down heavily like her legs had stopped working. "How did you find out?" she asked. "So it's true." I sat down across from her, my hands clenched in my lap. "They took it. All of it. Maya." Tell me, please. I need to hear someone say it out loud." Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "When Sarah died, she left everything to you. It wasn't much. She was young. She didn't have life insurance beyond what her employer provided. But there was a settlement from the accident, $127,000. She'd written in her will that it should go into a trust for you, accessible when you turned 21. Robert was the trustee. Yes, Sarah trusted him. He was married to Sharon by then, and they'd agreed to raise you. Sarah thought he'd take care of you." Elizabeth's hands twisted together. "I should have fought for custody. I wanted to, but I was 24 years old, unmarried, working 2 jobs just to pay rent. The court decided you were better off with Robert and Sharon, a stable 2-parent household." "They stole from me," I said flatly. "For 8 years, every penny. I didn't know." Elizabeth looked at me with such desperate sincerity that I believed her. "I swear, Maya, I didn't know until 6 months ago. I was going through some old boxes and I found paperwork from the trust. I saw the account number and I looked it up. When I realized what they'd done." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried." Her voice broke. "I called you 3 times. You never called back. I remembered those calls. 3 missed calls from an Oregon number I didn't recognize. I'd been busy with a client deadline. I'd meant to call back. I never did." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't apologize. You had no reason to trust anyone from that family." Elizabeth stood abruptly and left the room. She came back a minute later with a shoebox, old and battered. "These are yours. Sarah left them for you. I was supposed to give them to you when you turned 18, but Sharon, she said it would upset you, that it was better to let you move on." I took the box with shaking hands. Inside were letters, dozens of them in envelopes addressed to Maya in handwriting I'd never seen before. "She wrote you a letter every month of your life," Elizabeth said softly, "from the day you were born until the day she died. She wanted you to have something from her, to know she loved you." I pulled out the first letter. The paper was soft with age, the ink slightly faded. "My dearest Maya, you're 3 months old today. You smiled at me this morning, your first real smile, not just gas like your pediatrician said. You smiled at me and my whole world changed." I couldn't read anymore. The words blurred. "There's something else you need to know," Elizabeth said quietly. She sat back down, looking older and more tired than before. "Something I should have told you years ago." "What?" She took a deep breath. "Robert isn't your father, Maya. Not biologically." The room tilted. "What say?" "Sarah never told him. She was already pregnant when they met. You were about 2 months along. Your biological father was someone she'd dated briefly, someone who made it very clear he wanted nothing to do with a child. Robert knew. Sarah told him before they got serious, and he said he didn't care. He said he'd raise you as his own." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "Sharon never wanted children," Elizabeth continued, "but Robert convinced her, said it was the right thing to do, honoring Sarah's memory. But I think Sharon resented you from the beginning, not because of who you were, but because you were Sarah's child. And Sharon had always been jealous of Sarah. Why? Because Sarah was everything Sharon wanted to be. Beautiful, talented, loved. When your grandmother gave Sarah that trust fund money when the accident settlement came through, Sharon saw it as one more thing Sarah had that she didn't. So when the money came to you," Elizabeth trailed off, "I think she saw it as taking back what should have been hers. I sat there in my aunt's living room, holding letters from a mother I couldn't remember learning that the man I'd called father my entire life was connected to me by nothing but a lie wrapped in obligation." "I'm sorry," Elizabeth said again. "I'm so sorry you had to grow up in that house with those people. I should have fought harder for you. It's not your fault." I put the letters back in the box carefully, like they might dissolve if I wasn't gentle. "None of this is your fault." But it was someone's fault, and I was done letting them get away with it. Chapter 12. The confrontation. I got to the office at 11, late enough that people had stopped expecting me at my desk, early enough that the day was in full swing. The Barrett creative offices hummed with pre-holiday energy. Someone had put up Christmas decorations over the weekend silver garland, a small tree in the corner lights strung across the open workspace. It all felt surreal, like set dressing for a play that was about to go very wrong. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire in Junction filed. "They've been served. Brace yourself." I'd barely processed the message when I heard Olivia's voice, high and sharp, cutting through the office chatter. "What the hell is this?" She was standing at the entrance to the executive wing, holding papers, her face flushed with anger. Robert stood behind her, his expression carved from stone. Everyone in the office went quiet. "Maya," Olivia's voice cracked like a whip. "Conference room. Now." I stood, slowly picked up my laptop bag, and walked toward the executive wing. Every eye in the office followed me. I could feel Marcus watching from his desk, tension radiating from him. The conference room had glass walls. Robert's design choice meant to make the company feel transparent and open. Right now, it meant everyone would see what happened next. I stepped inside. Olivia slammed the door. "You filed a lawsuit," she hissed. "Against your own family, against the company." "I filed an injunction to stop you from selling a company I own 30% of," I said calmly, "and a complaint about the theft of my inheritance." Robert's face had gone red. "You don't own anything. You're an employee, Maya. You always have been." "Actually, I'm a founding partner." I pulled out my phone, opened the photo Claire had sent me, and held it up. The LLC registration. My name. My signature. "The Oregon Secretary of State disagrees with you." "That's," Olivia started. "Proof," I finished. "Official legal proof that you've been lying for 8 years, that you destroyed documents, that you committed fraud." "We gave you a job," Robert said, his voice low and dangerous. "We gave you a home, an opportunity, a place in this family. You stole from me." My voice didn't rise, but it filled the room. "You took my mother's money, every penny she left me. $127,000 transferred illegally to Olivia's personal accounts over 8 years. "That money was for family expenses," Olivia shot back. "For the business, for bullshit." The word felt good to say. "I have the transaction records, your apartment in Portland, your car, your vacations to Europe. All funded with my inheritance. All stolen." The office outside had gone completely silent. I could see people standing near the glass, not even pretending not to stare. "You're making a mistake," Robert said quietly. "Families don't sue each other. We work things out." "You're not my family." The words came out calm, certain. "You never were. You took me in because Sarah asked you to. Because it looked good. Because it was the right thing to do. But you never wanted me. You just wanted to look like good people while treating me like garbage." "Maya," Olivia's voice had changed, gone softer, pleading. "Come on. Don't do this. We can talk about this. We can work something out." "No," I said. "We can't." The door opened. Ethan Cole stood in the doorway, and for a moment no one moved. He looked at Olivia, then at Robert, then at me. His expression was unreadable. "Mr. Cole," Robert started, his voice shifting to that jovial business tone he used with investors. "This is just a family misunderstanding, a little disagreement about how you've been embezzling funds and committing IP fraud for years," Ethan said mildly. He stepped into the room, and I noticed he wasn't alone. 2 people in suits followed him, a man and a woman I didn't recognize. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think we need to have a conversation. All of us." He looked at me. "Maya, you should stay for this." Olivia's face had gone white. "Ethan, what are you—" "I've been conducting an audit of Barrett Creative for the past 8 months, Ethan said calmly. "Due diligence for my investment. Standard procedure." He pulled out a tablet, connected it to the conference room display screen. What I found was interesting. The screen lit up. Access logs, financial statements, email chains, project files with timestamps and metadata showing who created what and when. Everything. He had everything. "Ms. Barrett," Ethan said, looking at Olivia, "you're being suspended pending a full investigation into fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty, effective immediately." "You can't," she started. "I can. I own 40% of this company as of 6 months ago. Maya owns 30%. Together we control the board." He looked at Robert. "And Mr. Barrett, you're being removed as advisor. The company's legal team has been instructed to cooperate with Ms. Maya Barrett's attorneys regarding the trust fund theft." The room spun. "You knew," I said to Ethan. "You knew everything." He met my eyes. "I needed proof. Real proof, not just suspicion. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. But why? The question came out raw. Why did you care? Because he stopped, glanced at the other people in the room, then back at me. Can we talk privately? Before I could answer, Olivia lunged toward me, her face twisted with rage. You bitch! You ungrateful, jealous... Miss Barrett. The woman in the suit stepped between us. I'm Rebecca Chen with Morris & Associates Legal Counsel for the company. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. It was over, just like that. Olivia left Robert following behind her, both of them walking past their employees, my employees who'd witnessed everything through the glass walls. I stood in the conference room shaking and felt nothing like victory, only exhaustion. Chapter 13, The Truth About Ethan. He came to my apartment that night. I'd given him the address before I'd really thought about what that meant. Ethan Cole, investor, standing in the tiny one-bedroom place on East Burnside that I'd lived in for 6 years, because I couldn't afford anything better on the salary Olivia paid me. It was raining. Of course it was raining. This was Portland in December. He stood in my doorway, soaked through, and said, I owe you an explanation. Yeah, I said. You do? I let him in. Made coffee because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. We sat at my small kitchen table, the rain hammering against the window, and he told me everything. His sister Grace, 26 years old, brilliant, funny, fragile. She'd worked for a family friend's tech startup, poured her soul into it, built their whole platform architecture. The friend had taken credit, pushed her out. When Grace tried to fight back, they'd destroyed her reputation, called her unstable, made sure she couldn't work anywhere in the industry. She'd killed herself 2 years ago. I blamed myself, Ethan said quietly, staring into his coffee cup. I was her big brother. I should have protected her, should have seen what was happening. But I was busy building my own career, my own investments. By the time I understood what she was going through, it was too late. I'm sorry, I said. When I started doing due diligence on Barrett Creative, I saw the patterns, the way Olivia took credit for everything, the way you were always in the background, unnamed, invisible. It reminded me of Grace. He looked up at me. So I dug deeper, found the financial irregularities, the trust fund theft, all of it. You used me, I said. Not angry, just stating facts. I used the situation, he corrected. I dated Olivia to get close to the company, to gather evidence. I won't apologize for that, she deserved to be caught. But I never used you, Maya. I barely talked to you until everything was in place. Why? Because I didn't want to put you in danger, didn't want to give you false hope. I needed to be absolutely certain before I involved you. He set down his cup. And because every time I saw you in that office taking Olivia's abuse, staying quiet, disappearing, it made me angry. Angry at her. Angry at myself. Angry that the world keeps letting this happen. So this was about Grace, not about me. It started that way, Ethan admitted, but somewhere along the line it became about you too. About making sure what happened to my sister doesn't keep happening to people like you. We sat in silence for a while, the rain the only sound. What happens now? I asked finally. Now you decide. Ethan leaned back in his chair. You own 30% of a successful creative agency. I own 40%. We could rebuild it. Clean house? Run it the right way. Or we could sell it, split the proceeds, and walk away. Your choice. What about the Christmas dinner? I asked. My father invited me, before all this happened. Ethan smiled grimly. Are you planning to go? Yes, I said. I think I need to. Then I'll be there too. He stood. Because I have a feeling Olivia won't go quietly, and I want to make sure she knows exactly who she's dealing with now. After he left, I sat alone in my apartment, holding the box of letters from my mother, and thought about the strange way justice works. It doesn't heal you. It doesn't erase the past. It doesn't give you back the years that were stolen. But it gives you something else, the power to write the next chapter yourself. And sometimes that's enough.